So again, והנה עניין ההטבה של הנרות.
Where is that?
ממש in the middle. If you can find it out. והנה עניין ההטבה של הנרות בנפש אלוקית, שיאיר בפנימיות הלב, אינה אלא על ידי הרצון של הנפש, שהיא התפשטות בחינת עצמיות הנפש. So we said, the nefesh in general, but it means the nefesh locus in this case. And what he wants to say is that bettering the candles, meaning lighting them, but which is called bettering, making them better, is through the will. But which will are we talking about? We're talking about the higher will, which is the extension, pashtut, of the substance of the nefesh. And as we said, ubchinat bli gvul shel nefesh, and that is the infinite aspect, the limitless aspect of the nefesh. Neged kochotea shem hasechel ve'amidot. And it is contrary to the powers of the nefesh, right? So we have, in the nefesh, we have three levels. The substance, usually we call it the essence actually, the mahut, which is the ratzon. Then we have sechel umidot. They're the powers of the nefesh. And then we have the garments of the nefesh. Machshava, dibur, v'maaseh. So we have 1, 2, 3. Ratzon is by itself. Will is by itself. Sometimes we add to it pleasure also. Oneg v'ratzon in Chassidus, or ta'anug v'ratzon. And then the powers of the soul, which are the intellect and the emotions. And then the garments of the soul, machshava, dibur, and maaseh. That's the usual construct that the Alter Rebbe talks about. So the big difference between the powers of the soul and the substance or the essence of the soul is that the essence is limitless. It's bli gvul. And the sechel amidot are not. And the powers of the soul, which are the intellect and the emotions, are not. Okay. שהם ההערות בעלמא נמשכו בצמצום גדול מן הרצון. Why are they limited and not limitless? The intellect and the emotions, because they're only a ha'ara, meaning they're after the tzimtzum, as it were, in the nefesh. This is a big important topic, that just as it was tzimtzum for Hashem to create the world, so there's tzimtzum when the soul comes into the body. Where's the tzimtzum in the world? The tzimtzum in the world is between olamot and sof, the worlds, the infinite worlds, the limitless worlds, and olam tzimtzum, and the limited world. The same thing happens in the psyche, in the nefesh. In the nefesh, the limitless is the keter, is the ratzon, the higher will, which is limitless. It has no limits to it. And the after the tzimtzum is the intellect and the emotions. So for instance, when a person wants to, this is one of the big issues you just talked about, the story you mentioned on the way, that the Polish Rebbe said that to be a Rebbe is also a taiva, it's also a craving. But you have to get rid of all the other cravings in order to get to this one. What's the idea? The idea is, I'll say it in Chassidus, not in Polish language, but in real Chassidus. What we say is that you first have to get rid of the emotions, the intellect and the emotions of the animal soul. Okay? You first have to get rid of what you already have inside you. Those are the taivas that he talked about that you had before. So your emotions are a taiva. They're not just the fact that a person wants to feel loved. That's a taiva. He has to get rid of that. Okay? If you're dependent on it, you're in trouble. But the world says get rid of the need to be loved because otherwise you won't survive. And Torah says you need to get rid of the need to be loved in order to thrive. Not because you won't survive. Because if you want to do avodas Hashem, if you want to serve Hashem, it can't be that you're serving yourself. So you have to get rid of that taiva. The same thing with other emotions that you have. You have to get rid of those emotions. So you have to do a tzimtzum. What was a tzimtzum? The first thing that the tzimtzum created was a halal panui. was an empty space. And into that empty space, you can now bring down new emotions. Where are these emotions from? It's also to be loved. But what does it mean to be loved there? It's not at all to be loved because to comfort my ego, to make me feel better. Being loved there is to be being loved because, as it says, that every person who's beloved below is also beloved above. That the sign that I'm serving Hashem properly is that it's accepted by the people around me, that they care for me, that they love it, that they don't feel that I'm kind of thrown in their tush. They feel that here's a person who really cares about it. That goes the example that you told me once, many times, about Mendel Futterfass on the train. The guy who didn't want to put tefillin on, and when Mendel came, he was willing to. So he said to the other person who was doing Mitzrayim, "You wanted me to put tefillin on for you, but he wants me to put tefillin on for me." He cares for me. So that's what it means to be beloved below. That it's a taiva. It's also a taiva, but it's a different level of taiva. It's a different level of a craving. It may look the same to some, right? With the polar story, in the end, it sounds to you like, in the end, they're all craving. So what does it matter? No, this is a divine craving. The craving to be a Rebbe comes from the higher soul, from the divine soul.
A craving of coming closer to Hashem, or a craving of Hashem coming closer to you?
It's the same. But here I'm not sure that that's a craving. I said I think that the craving is the need to help others. You can also have a craving to help others, to see what they can do for you. Okay? So that they owe you something. Okay? That's the lower craving. That comes from the animal soul. But you can have
It's not wanting to help others. That's wanting to help yourself.
You said it, because the animal soul does everything it does because it's a strategy to survive. It's the strategy that puts you in a better place. But the divine soul does things because it's a strategy to put Hashem in a better place, to put godliness in a better place. So all this, what it means is that there's a tzimtzum. You have to create an empty space inside yourself from the emotions and the intellect of the animal soul, and then into that empty space where you've created that tzimtzum, then the limitless ratzon, the limitless will, can begin to inject new emotions, new understandings. Okay? That's Chassidus on one foot. So that's called itpashtut atzmiut. That's called that the essence, the substance, begins to appear below. Okay? It's mitpashet. It extends. How does it extend? So we know that an extension in the worlds is the kav, is the ray of light that comes down, and it penetrates. It goes from the infinite, meaning in this case from the ratzon, and penetrates into the empty space, and it creates worlds there. What kind of worlds? It creates worlds of emotions and intellect, but these ones are based on the divine soul, not on the animal soul. וידוע שאריך אנפין מלובש ומצומצם תוך כל מידה ומידה. And this is one of the things that the Maggid was mechadish, that everywhere you find arich. You find the will everywhere. The will is injected everywhere. Okay? In every single emotion that you have, in every single faculty that you have. Why is that? Because the infinite, when you say it's infinite, when you say it's limitless, it really does fill the whole space.
Where is this Ratzon in the pictures of the lines going up, the lines going down, and where is it?
Ratzon is Keter. It's just the crown. It's your superconsciousness.
As high as you can go.
No, above that's Tanug, but in general, that's the first name that everybody always says for the Keter. Well, how do we know that Keter is? I just saw it. One of the things that the academic world has a tough time with, but also the Torah world. Everybody has a tough time with this. Where did the Arizal get his understandings from? He said himself that he gets his understandings from Gemara. He learned a lot of Shas. So I think that just a couple of I think it was probably 4 weeks ago. In the Daf Yomi, we saw the Gemara that I think is the basis for saying that the Ratzon is infinite. It says that Bizman Yisrael osin Ratzono shel Makom, that when we do the will of Hashem, meaning the higher will, then we're limitless. What does it mean, limitless there? It says that there's 2 psukim. One says, Vayazarcha ka'afar ha'aretz. Okay? And there's another one that says, Asher lo yisafer velo yimaneh merov. So afar ha'aretz, theoretically, you could still count. Okay? It's not. It's hard, but it's not impossible.
It's
Okay. But Asher lo yisafer velo yimaneh merov, that's bli gvul. So it says, what's the difference? The Gemara says, Bizman shosim ratzono shel makom, asher lo yimaneh velo yisafer merov. Then you can't count it at all. It's completely limitless. But when we're not doing the will of Hashem, we still have an infinite quality to it, but it's different. It's one that's countable. It's like a far haaretz. It's not that many. So I think that's one of the sources, because it immediately connects it with the word will. And the ratzono shel makom. Ratzono shel makom is aser ratzoncha kirtzono. It's like that's what the sages say we need to do to make our will like His. So anyway, so arich is everywhere. Toch kol midah u'midah, inside every measure, inside every faculty of the soul, mekifet kulam, and it also surrounds them. It's inside and it also surrounds. V'reuta ze deliba nikra keter zeza u'min haratzon ha'makif ha'gadol al kochot hanefesh, and that's what he says is reuta deliba. We talked about this. Reuta deliba as being infinite. So how did it become infinite? It became infinite because here he gives a very, call it pedestrian explanation. It says even doesn't go very high. It just says it's arich. The ratzon inside the heart, when the ratzon, the higher will, appears inside the heart, it's limitless. And so that's where you get a feeling of infinity even within a simple person. There's a feeling of it, there's an ability to connect to infinity. שהוא למעלה מן השכל והמידות, שבו look at these guys. Now, who is Jack and who is Jill? Or who is Hans and who is Gans? Okay. שלמעלה מן השכל והמידות שבו נקראים טורי חשוכה. They're called the dark mountains, right? מעבר להרי החושך. Ever heard that phrase? Beyond the dark mountains.
Oh yeah, I think so.
It's used in the Medrash to describe Africa. Africa is beyond the dark mountains. What are you talking about?
The people are dark.
No, that's not what they meant. They meant that there are emotions that you don't even know about. And they can go in 2 directions. They can be very high emotions or very low emotions. The things that you've never even imagined that you have. Because mountains in general is emotions. The moment you say that they're dark, what you're saying is that they're beyond the consciousness. Shehem sham behe'elim gadol. Right? That they're very hidden. In this case, we're talking about the high emotions, the emotions of arich, of the keter. V'itpashtutam ba'archava gdola kmo haratzon. But when they extend out, they expand tremendously, just like the will. They're limitless. Where does the Alter Rebbe say this in the 20th epistle? There he talks about Iu v'chayo yichad v'on, Iu v'garmo yichad v'on. In the world of Atzilus, the midos are still limitless, so therefore they extend without end. Okay? But here, what he's saying is that when it comes from the Ratzon, even if you're not in Atzilus, you're not a tzaddik. You don't have the consciousness of a tzaddik. Still, when the midos come from the higher will, they have the quality of expanding forever, or at least almost limitlessly. In Atzilus, they are limitless. And here, because they're coming from the higher will, even in a simple person, this is the ikar of the Baal Shem Tov Shita that we talked about last week also, that the higher Ratzon, the moment you see the higher Ratzon, the person out of his love for Hashem or fear of Hashem, he's willing to sacrifice his life. How can it be? Don't you have checks and balances in you? How did you suddenly become such a fanatic? Right? Emotions that have no end is fanaticism. It's like a child. Or, he says it's like a person who's beyond taking into consideration the regular things that people do in this world. He's beyond that. So what is he thinking of? He's thinking of Hashem's higher will. And he says, I can't disconnect from that. So he becomes a fanatic. He's willing to give up his life. Which is pretty crazy when you think about it. And how you don't have the... Let's say somebody they're not about to kill the whole village. It's just you. Where does the person take the strength to say, okay, I won't worry about my wife and kids anymore? Where does he get the mishigas in his hand? He's a fanatic. So that's limitless emotions. That's the example of limitless emotions. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov saw, and he was talking about, that every Jew has this. In any case, אך מפני התפשטות הרצון, אין ניכר שם אהבה והתגלות, אלא בהלם גדול. Because there's so much will there, you see the fanaticism, you don't see the emotion. You see like the person's driven out of his mind. That's what it looks like. And being driven is having tremendous will. So you don't see the emotion that's involved. It's hard to see it. ושאמרו המידות שבהתגלות הנמשכים בצמצום מן השכל, צריך להיטיבם ולחדשם ממול פני המנורה. היינו מהמידות שברצון, שבחינת הערת פנים דאריך אנפי. It says like this. So usually, what we get out of meaning the usual emotions that a person has, the usual divine emotions that a person has are coming from his learning of Torah. But he says, like you said before, because you become distant, because there's not enough good air. So it extinguishes. So even though you know these things, people learn, and they understand, and they know, they can't bring it into daily life. This is why is it not lighting the path in your daily life? I understand what you're saying, because you're distant from your shlichus. You don't have the drive. The drive's gone.
So the driver, since you're great.
That too, but I think it's less talking about that here. It's just saying that you've come to a very low place. His image before was that the neshama came down to a very low place. It's in the body. And you lose the drive. So even though you know these things, you find it very hard to act upon them. You don't feel the emotion. So he says that's what it means to light the candles. Where do you light the candles from? You take from the arich, you take from the middle candle, which is the main part of the menorah, and that represents the midos, the emotions, the way they are in the crown. And you light from that, or you take from that the light. You don't light from it. You don't necessarily carry it over. But what you do is you're inspired by it. And you look at it. The other candles need to look at the center candle. So they're inspired by it to awaken again, to become infinite again. Shuach hagat shebo. So the ha'arat panim, the light that comes out of arich itself is dark, because you can't see the keter, it's super conscious. But the ha'arat panim, the fact that there is some light coming out of it, he says that's the midos in arich. That's chesed gvura tiferet of arich. Va'ikar b'chinat hatiferet sheba nikar chamim rabim. Right. So that we talked about yesterday. That's what 2 days ago. Sorry. That's why we had to review, because I already didn't remember what we talked about yesterday, 2 days ago. So that's called great mercy. And like we said, whenever mercy itself, compassion itself, that's in tiferet. That's in beauty. But why is it called rachamim rabim? What does it mean when you add the rabim? We said that, I think it was one of the last things we said last time. When you say rabim, that's a sign that you should be talking about the crown, not about the revealed emotions. You should be talking about the emotions in the crown. Like
Rabin is like going back to infinity?
Ken. Rabim is to say there's many, or great. Rachamim Rabim, because here it's great compassion. It's like Rav Chesed. Chesed itself is the regular loving kindness in Zah. When you say Rav Chesed, great loving kindness, so you're talking about the Chesed of Arich. So Rachamim Rabim is the Rachamim, the compassion, the Tiferet in the Keter, in Arich. Rachmei, go Rachmei. It's compassion within compassion. Why? Because it's the pnimius. It's the inner aspect of compassion. Ki Rachamim stam deza. When I usually talk about Rachamim, the usual compassion that's in Zah, in the small countenance. Mikabel arato mirachamim rabim shebe'arich. So where does it receive its compassion from? What's inside it? It's the compassion of Arich, of the crown. And the meaning is very simple, the difference between them. That regular Rachamim can even redeem somebody who is guilty. So it says like if you don't love someone, so have compassion on them. When you have compassion on them, you'll come to love them. Which is the entire reason why you're not allowed to have compassion on somebody who's achzar, who's cruel. Because if a person's cruel, you'll come to love cruelty. It's like the situation here in Eretz Yisrael. That all the leftists, because they don't understand the simple principle that you should love everybody, but don't love cruel people. Because when you love cruel people, you yourself become cruel. You begin to love cruelty. And to love it means not that you want to be cruel to others, but you begin to justify it. You begin to say, yes, this is something that's good. That's the power of regular compassion. What's the compassion within the compassion? It's even more than that. It's saying that it's not just that I love someone who I usually don't love, like Yaakov asher pada et Avram. That Yaakov's compassion makes Avram able to connect even to things that he doesn't want to connect to. And here he's saying that it's one of those weeders, I think that spins around really quickly. But he has two. We're lucky that he has two things. He's an Arab and he works for the Yiriyah. So he works a minute, and he rests for two. He works for a minute, and rests for two. So now it's his minute. Actually, it's more like a minute and 10 minutes. So now for 10 minutes, he'll be quiet. Because he did something. So he's putter now for 10 minutes. No, not putter yet. So what's the compassion in Arich? How is it different? Because there the compassion is not just to like Abraham, that I want to do an act of loving kindness towards somebody. I want to love somebody who's worthy of it. Okay? That's regular compassion. The higher compassion, the one that comes from the crown, it allows me to even have a sense of, I don't know how to, the word that comes up to me all the time is want, but it's not the right word. It's to have a sense of shared direction with somebody that I normally couldn't have that with. Say it another way, I can cooperate with you.
Common denominator.
Can, but it's not just the denominator with both humans. We have the same needs. It's that I can find a way to align our interests. I can find a way to, the word want, cooperate, I can't find anything better right now. Even though normally I wouldn't work with this person, I wouldn't do anything with it. It's a different level of compassion to just give somebody when you feel superior. When you give, you're superior. But when you have compassion at the level of will, you're already feeling a sense of equality. It's much more than that. It's like I'm willing to add you into the direction that I'm going. That's what it says, that when you walk with somebody, you have to be very careful who you walk with. Not to walk with a person who has very different interests than your own. Okay? Because he'll take you off, meaning walking is like living with. Because he'll take you off completely from your agenda in life, from your mission in life. But higher compassion is, so give an example, that when we say to Hashem, we want to awaken higher compassion, it's like compassion from the will, it's like saying that Hashem wants what we do. Even what we do, even though it's not exactly what our mission was supposed to be. So Hashem, I want you to give me leeway. That you can want this also. That's what we say, Yehi Ratzon. Ratzon is higher will. כי רחמים סתם דזה מקבל האור אומר רחמים רבים שבאריך אנפין, ולהיות כי עיקר קלקול הנרות שאינם מקבלים האור אלוקי מצד הרצון דווקא, שנקודת הלב הטבעית, שנמשך ונתפשט מאוד בענייני העולם הזה. Like we said, the reason that the candles are not lighting, they're not illuminating when the Kohen comes in the morning and sees that they're out, is because the person is too steeped in materialism. And so the will there has been drawn into the issues of this world, into the material issues. שהוא גם כן בלי גבול בנפש הטבעית. And don't think for a second that the divine soul is the only one whose will is infinite. The animal souls, the natural soul's will is also infinite. It also has a keter. Yeah, that's one of the things people don't make a mistake of not appreciating. Just as much as the divine soul is infinite, it has a keter that's infinite and limitless, the animal soul has a keter that's infinite and limitless also. Yeah, it's a big chiddush. But it's not such a big chiddush, because what is the animal soul? What is its infinite? It's like, מי שיש לו מנה רוצה 200. If you have 100, you want 200. Why does he want more? Why is he not, like an animal? Okay, it's very interesting that an animal is not like that. It ate, it's done. The rest of the day, what do? You lounge around. You're in line, you sleep. It doesn't need more, it doesn't grow fat. It's very interesting. And maybe domesticated animals do, I'm not sure. But normal animals, the ones that are outside in the wild, done eating, it's done. It doesn't have a stockpile of meat that it caught. It keeps it for a rainy day. It goes hungry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. It doesn't eat. What, it's so stupid it can't figure out that if you caught something, better to leave a little bit for tomorrow and go catch some more and so on. They don't work that way. But in the human, the animal soul is very different. The animal soul in the human always wants more. And if he has 100, he wants 200. And somebody says to him, so what are you going to do with the 200? You only need 100. He says, no problem. There's a bank. I'll put it in the bank. And then the next day he puts another 100 and another. What are you saving this up for? What a waste of life. Look at what you could have done with all this money. Okay? So it also has an infinite side to it. You have to be very careful of it. So because of that infinite side, the candles go out. Meaning you're not burning with desire, you're not burning with emotion, with love and fear of God. Because what are you burning with? Love of money, love of food, these things.
Love of money? How could there be such a thing?
Who could love money? שהוא גם כן בלי גבול בנפש הטבעית, והוא מבחינת עוברי רצונו, שאת זה לעומת זה עשה אלוקים. We talked about this once. That the Alter Rebbe I think this is the first time he mentions it. He had a chiddush that Ovrei Retzono means that they pass over his will, they skip over his will. Okay? That's his chap in this. They skip over, meaning they skip over the divine will. So what do they have? They have their will. Who was the example of this? He said Rome, the gluttony of Rome, that Rabbi Akiva saw, or the Rashbi saw. I don't remember who said it. Even though that if there's so much infinity, and you can learn a number of different ways, but if people who are steeped in materialism can want to become Jeff Bezos with, I don't know, $100 billion, what are you ever in the world going to do with $100 billion? If you started spending now, and you spend $1 million every minute, I don't know even how you could. It would still take you a good part of a year.
Much more.
No, why? A minute.
Because you're getting interest on it.
Okay. So, in any case, it would take you a long, long time to. If that's all you did, and you were able to figure out how to spend $1 million every minute, I'm not sure you could. So what do people need this for? What is that? It says that's the infinite aspect of the animal soul. So if the infinite aspect of the animal soul is like this, all the more so the infinite aspect of the divine soul. Then you can do much more. So if a person is learning, he wants to learn much more. If he did one fill-in today, he wants to do much more. He has infinite more capacity all the time. His will is infinite. Okay? Because the holiness is stronger than the opposite. שאת זה לעומת זה עשה אלוקים, כמו שרצון של נפש אלוקית התפשטותה בלי גבול, כן הרצון הטבעי מתפשט בלי גבול. In any case, because the infinite aspect of the animal soul is extending in the person's life, so it's putting out the candles. ומכבה, interesting that it writes מכבה here, utachet. It's different, right? When you say extinguishes in Hebrew, you say utachaf. המכבה, mem chaf bet hey. Mechabe is not to extinguish, it's just to conceal. Kmo chevyon, kmo machboim. It's to conceal. So it conceals the divine light, because it doesn't want to say that it extinguishes it. We can't extinguish it, but you can certainly conceal it. Okay? שלא יאירו המידות בשעת התפילה להיות מלובש גם כן בתוך כל מידה ומידה. So what the person ends up with is that when he davens, he doesn't feel any emotions. Doesn't feel anything, because they're all concealed under the needs, the infinite needs, or the infinite will of the animals. ולזאת העצה יוצא בשעה שמאיר לו מהרצון שנפש אלוקית. next page. בחינת בכל מאודיך, להתבונן, אפילו נותן את נפשך הטבעית. So he says, what's the eitzah? The eitzah is that when you're davening, and you're trying to come to Bechol Mo'odecha, which is the infinite aspect of the will, okay? That the will has no bounds. Divine will has no bounds also. So how do you come to that if you're hidden under the layers of infinite will of the animal soul, of your infinite need for materialism? Really, infinite is the wrong word. Limitless. Meaning, it's beyond what I want now. It's more than what I have now.
No, there's never
But the person thinks, I don't really want $100 billion. I just want $10,000 more than what I have now. That, for you, that's the limitless aspect of the animal soul.
Can't imagine any more than that, but when you get the 10,000.
Right, then you want 100,000.
You can imagine a lot more.
Okay. So what's the eitzah? What is the advice? He says that you should think, Afilu noten et nafshecha tivit. What if Hashem would take away all my materialism? What would I want then? Okay. That's how you uncover the will of the divine soul. You would see that if Hashem took away my animal soul, my natural soul, at least its power to want more, so would I then... Again, this happens to everybody, right? Hopefully. It happens, I think, when you reach 50. Because I'm experiencing it now. I have less and less interest in the material world. Okay? Yeah. stuff that I thought in the past I used to daydream about, I don't daydream about it anymore. So what do I daydream about
Moved
now?
on to better things, Bitcoin.
Yeah, even Bitcoin, I don't daydream about it. I don't think about, oh, if I had this. It looks like it's a waste of time already. It's a waste of time. What I need. I have what I need. So, what does the feeling become? It becomes, but in Torah, that's not the feeling. In good deeds, it's not what you feel.
Right.
There,
So they're the opposite. One is samech b'chelko,
Right,
one is good,
right.
one is b'sitz, and
Right.
the other guy is very bad.
so I think that when you reach a certain age, I'm guessing it's around 50. Maybe it's a little bit later, a little bit earlier for certain people. But then you suddenly
tell you when
begin
I
to
get
feel. Yeah. Well, you're young.
Hey!
I don't think it's what we think it is. It's water from above. Anyway, so it's not. So what do you think about? You begin to think that how much I would want. Like for instance, this crazy idea that I had this year. I want to finish all of Shas this year. Crazy idea.
Well, that's great, because that's an objective. And an
But it's
objective is
infinite.
Very good.
Relative to what I've been doing until now, it's infinite.
And people say, well, that's fine, there's no problem.
Okay, so that's
I just
switching
the
them.
idea that I wanted to learn the Sefer Shabbos.
Oh, there you go.
And he said, it's impossible, it's too long. I said, when I finish it, I want to learn the whole Yad Rebbe Shulchan Aruch for Shabbos. It's impossible, it's too long. And as we're learning it, I'm wondering to myself, is it possible? I said, what are you doing? I'm going to go to Gush Etzion and see my soldiers.
I wish they were your soldiers and not the Medina's soldiers. But
They become the Rebbe soldiers.
slowly.
I say to a lot of the soldiers, just because it's time of year, they'll be going to figure it. But the true soldiers, I say to them, it's your responsibility to look after all the soldiers in your group. Because I'm making you the Shaliach of the Rebbe. You have to fill in, you have to make sure you and all your friends look after them. Make them shluchim.
Good. So just to finish, okay, just the final line here. So when he awakens to the divine will inside of him, Yizkor etzono hativid v'yivatlena. So you can cancel away the natural infinite will or the limitless will. B'chol levavo lomar imcha lo chafatzti klal, rak l'Hashem levado. He says, I don't need you. I don't want your more.
I don't want you, I don't want to get Aiden.
No, here we're talking about the animal soul.
You and nothing else.
Okay. So here I don't want you, animal soul, and I don't need the feeling that you give me. Right? Well, how does a person feel alive? When they want more. So I don't need that from you. I don't need to feel alive from getting another $1,000. That's not what's going to make me feel alive. What's going to make me feel alive? I learned more. What's going to make me feel alive? I did another mivtza. What's going to make me feel alive? I gave more tzedakah.
Oh.
That brings the more into my life. That brings the will, the infinite will, into my life. Okay?
So tomorrow, Bezos Hashem, we're going to finish this now?
I hope so.